Book of Habakkuk chapter 1. We can divide this chapter into 4 parts. The first part is an introduction to the whole book. We can find it in verse 1. The first word that comes to Habakkuk's mind and he begins with, is prophecy. Of course, prophecy means words from God, that is true. But the word in Hebrew also carries the meaning of burden or heaviness. That serves the character of the book, which is full of heavy judgment, whether on the kingdom of Judah or Babylon itself. This judgment is clear, starting from the first chapter of the book, to the last one. The second part is about Habakkuk's first complaint. It consists of the verses 2 to 4. He is frustrated by the supremacy of evil. So, we find him asking the Lord, "How long, Lord? How long will the wicked continue to win, and the righteous always oppressed? How long will I keep praying and not get any response?" But even though he said to the Lord, "You do not listen," we find Habakkuk praying to the same Lord, because he is sure within himself that the Lord hears and will respond. We can summarize Habakkuk's complaint in 3 points. The first is evil. He says to the Lord, "I cry out to you. Violence. Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife, and conflict abounds." The second thing that troubles Habakkuk is the judiciary and earthly courts. For not respecting God's laws, the law is paralyzed. Which leads to either one of 2 things: no verdict being issued at all, postponing the complaint on and on. Or the verdict is issued, but unfortunately justice is perverted, and the verdict is issued in favor of the evil one. As Habakkuk did not find hope in man, he looked to the Lord to see his reaction. That made him complain even more. Because he found the Lord as if he was not listening, for he did not save. What seemed like the Lord do tolerate wrongdoing. And because this issue is not recent, the injustice is from old, since the days of prophet Micah, who wrote his prophecy in 730 BC. Also complaining of injustice, saying, "Your rich people are violent." The third part. It consists of the verses 5 to 11, where we find the Lord's first answer to Habakkuk's complaint. And we understand from God's answer 2 very clear things about him. The first is God's righteousness. That's why he said, "Look, and be amazed." Because the punishment that he is about to announce will bewilder, even Habakkuk himself, he won't believe it. He will be confused because he will feel that God's reaction to evil is much greater than his expectations. This means that the righteousness of God is surely much greater than that of Habakkuk. Contrary to what Habakkuk thought, as if he was the one asking for judgment, while God was silent and did not care. The second clear fact in the Lord's answer is God's authority. Because, if Judah was saved before from the Assyrian captivity in 723 BC and felt that no one could pose a threat to him now, God could raise up the Babylonian Empire out of nothing and use it to discipline Judah. We can learn 4 things about Babylon from God's answer. Number 1. It will be a global empire. He declares that it will march throughout the earth, to seize dwellings not their own. They gather prisoners like sand. They mock kings and scoff at rulers. The second thing, that her judgment would be unjust. And this is rational because those people have rejected the just law of the Lord before. Then came the one who will rule them with his own mood, without law or legislation. As they are a law to themselves. Like Nebuchadnezzar, whom he would, he slew, and whom he would, he kept alive. For instance, the king commanded once that 3 men should be thrown into the fiery furnace. Another time, he commanded that whoever did not know the dream would die. The third thing that distinguishes Babylon is its strength and speed. Their horses are swifter than leopards, fiercer than wolves. They fly like an eagle swooping to devour. And God concludes his answer with the 4th point, stating that Babylon has committed a sin. God raised them for a specific purpose and set limits for them, limits they should not transgress. But we find them transgressing their limits and sinning. His spirit passed on, he does transgress. His power became his God. According to Young's literal translation, this led Habakkuk to complain again. We find this second complaint in the fourth and final part of the chapter, which consists of verses 12 to 17. However, this time he does not complain about the absence of judgment, but about the severity of it. In his complaint, he relies on two things. The first, God's mercy, as he depends totally on God's mercy, not their merit. He says to him, "Lord, are you not from everlasting? You who dealt long ago with the same people and had mercy on them. Do it again." Then, he says to him, "My God, my Holy One," which means, we are yours, we belong to you, and you are our God. And what encourages him is the holiness of God, for God is beautiful himself, no one should be afraid of him. After this, he asked for deliverance. "Lord, put an end. Let the end of this discipline be punishment only, don't let it lead to death." Then he remembered that God is a rock, and recalled what Moses said before about God as the rock. He is the rock, his works are perfect, and all his ways are just. Deuteronomy chapter 32 verse 4. Because this is true about God, we hear him saying to Malachi in his last words with his people, "I the Lord do not change. So, you the descendants of Jacob, are not destroyed." Malachi chapter 3 verse 6. Hence, we understand that the Lord's chastisement is always intended to be corrective, not deadly. The second thing that Habakkuk clung to while complaining was the righteousness of God. He said to him, "Your eyes are too pure to look on evil, you cannot tolerate wrongdoing." Therefore, he asks two questions. Why then do you tolerate the treacherous? And, why are you silent while the wicked swallow up those more righteous than themselves? If Jonah in his time did not bear once what the Lord had done by forgiving Nineveh, surely it was more difficult for Habakkuk to find that God is not forgiving Babylon, but using them on his side, using them to chastise Judah. Even though Babylon is worse than Judah, we find here that, when Habakkuk sought righteousness in the first place, he could not bear it, so he asks now for mercy. We won't find a way for mercy and truth to meet together without conflict, except in Jesus' cross. God was merciful to man and remained righteous at the same time, while executing the whole judgment upon Christ. Here, Habakkuk complained about two things that characterized Babylon. The first is Babylon's cruelty. He said that they looked at people and treated them the same manner as a fisherman looks at fish in sea. They either used the hook to pull all of them up, and this was an Assyrian custom that had been transferred to Babylon. They used to put a hook in the nose or lips of their prisoners. This is what happened before to King Manasseh, when they put a hook in his nose. The second thing that they use is the net, indicating cruelty and barbarism in dealing with large numbers of peoples. The other thing Habakkuk complained about was Babylon's pride. He said to him, "O Lord, you are the one who gave them strength. But they don't feel it, they don't take credit for you. On the contrary, they sacrifice unto their net, burn incense unto their drag, feeling that they have done this with their savvy." We find a clear example for that in Nebuchadnezzar's words, when he said, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence, by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Daniel 4 verse 30. Habakkuk then asks, "Is there an ending? Will they continually slay nations without sparing?" Habakkuk is waiting for an answer. And that is what we will discover in chapter 2.